He spent a third of his country's annual budget on a coronation to crown himself emperor, but behind the grandeur was a monster the world would call the Cannibal Emperor. Jean-Bédel Bokassa was born in 1921. Orphaned early, he found structure and purpose in the French colonial army, serving with distinction in World War II and Indochina. He earned numerous medals for his bravery and loyalty. France saw him as a perfect, battle-hardened soldier to shape the military of the newly independent Central African Republic. In 1965, his cousin, President David Dacko, appointed him Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces. It was a decision Dacko would soon regret. Just 1 year later, driven by ambition and paranoia, Bokassa decided his cousin was leading the country to ruin. He plotted his move. On New Year's Eve 1965, while the capital celebrated, Bokassa and his troops launched a swift and bloodless coup, arresting Dacko and seizing power. He promised stability and an end to corruption. The people were hopeful. They had no idea they were welcoming a megalomaniacal and savage ruler. His narcissism knew no bounds. He appointed himself marshal, prime minister, and head of the sole political party, cultivating an extreme cult of personality. He made his own image mandatory in schools and offices. He even wrote a moral code that every citizen was forced to study and sing. He didn't just order torture, he personally participated in it. He was known to beat prisoners himself, sometimes to death, in the central prison. Rumors of his brutality became more specific and horrifying. Diplomats and aides began to whisper that the president was a cannibal. It was alleged he kept human bodies in the palace freezer and served human flesh to unsuspecting guests. The evidence, while circumstantial, was compelling. In 1976, his delusions peaked. He dissolved the republic and declared the Central African Empire, with himself as Emperor Bokassa I. He commissioned a 2-ton gold-plated crown, a solid gold throne, and a crown for his son that was heavier than the one made for Napoleon. His coronation on December 4, 1977, was a direct, pathetic imitation of Napoleon's. He even anointed himself, declaring his divine right to rule. The event cost over $20 million, a third of the nation's budget, while his people suffered in extreme poverty. The world looked on in disbelief. He had reached the summit. He was no longer a president or a marshal, but a self-crowned god emperor. He believed he was untouchable, but his insanity would soon spark a flame of resistance from the most unexpected place, a flame that would burn his golden empire to the ground. But his godlike status was an illusion. In January 1979, his empire was shaken by its most vulnerable subjects, school children protesting a decree forcing them to buy expensive uniforms from his wife's company. Bokassa's response was merciless. He personally ordered his imperial guard to crush the protest. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of children were arrested and dragged to prison. What happened next became known as the School Children's Massacre. It was alleged that Bokassa himself participated in the brutal beating that killed over 100 young students. The international community was horrified. This was the point of no return, even for his longtime supporters in France. The Cannibal Emperor had gone too far. The French government, led by Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, who had once accepted diamonds from Bokassa, could no longer protect him. They greenlit a covert coup. On September 20th, 1979, while Bokassa was on a trip to Libya, French forces launched Operation Barracuda, swiftly taking control of the capital without a fight. The news spread like wildfire. The empire was dissolved, and David Dacko was restored to power. The people of Bangui celebrated in the streets, tearing down the symbols of their tyrant. Bokassa was stranded, humiliated, and powerless. His empire had vanished overnight. He was now a fugitive, desperately seeking asylum. After being rejected by Libya and other allies, he finally found exile in Côte d'Ivoire, living under house arrest in a secluded villa, a far cry from his golden palace. Back in the Central African Republic, he was tried in absentia for murder, embezzlement, and cannibalism. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. But in a stunning move in 1986, Bokassa suddenly returned to the CAR. He apparently believed he would be welcomed as a hero and could retake his throne. His delusion was shattered instantly. He was arrested on the tarmac, a bewildered and pathetic figure, finally facing the justice he had long evaded. His trial was a media circus. He vehemently denied all charges, especially cannibalism, famously shouting, "I'm a religious man. I didn't eat anyone." In 1987, he was found guilty of murder and complicity in murder. The charge of cannibalism was dropped for lack of concrete evidence. His death sentence was commuted to life in prison. The self-crowned emperor, who once lived in unparalleled opulence, now rotted in a prison cell within the very palace complex he had built. In a final twist, he was released in 1993 after a general amnesty. He lived out his final days in Bangui, a forgotten and broken man. Jean-Bédel Bokassa died in 1996 of a heart attack. He never expressed remorse, leaving behind a legacy of unparalleled vanity, brutality, and madness. His story was over, but the scars he left on his nation and the haunting question of his ultimate depravity would remain forever. Decades later, the search for truth continues. Forensic teams still work to identify victims from mass graves, offering long-awaited closure to families. For thousands of families, the terror never ended. They are the living legacy of his regime, forever haunted by the disappearance of their loved ones. The economic devastation he caused was generational. His looting of the state's coffers crippled the nation's economy for years to come. Most chillingly, his playbook, using militarism, narcissism, and brutal secret police, remains a dark template for aspiring autocrats worldwide. A disturbing revisionist trend has emerged online, with some downplaying his atrocities and portraying him as a misunderstood nationalist hero. A new generation of artists and activists now fights to preserve the memory, ensuring the raw truth is not lost to time or political manipulation. Bokassa's reign is a stark lesson in how Cold War geopolitics allowed brutal dictators to thrive, as world powers turned a blind eye for their own gain. In schools, teaching this dark period remains a challenge. How do you explain such horror to children without fostering shame or repeating its mistakes? Psychologists study the collective trauma his reign inflicted, shaping the national psyche, from trust in institutions to interpersonal relationships. The most haunting question remains, was he truly a cannibal? The evidence was never proven in court, but the testimony and rumors persist, forever staining his story. His golden throne now sits as a museum relic, a silent testament to the fleeting nature of power built on fear and the ultimate emptiness of vanity. Today, the Central African Republic moves forward, but the ghost of Bokassa lingers, a permanent warning of the abyss that opens when madness is given absolute power. His story forces us to ask, what is the true measure of a monster? The body count, the depth of cruelty, or the sheer audacity of their delusion? Where does Jean-Bédel Bokassa rank among history's most brutal rulers? Vote in the comments and subscribe to descend deeper into the lives of history's monsters.